We're excited about our panel this afternoon, titled She Will Connect, Closing the Technology Gender Gap for Adolescent Girls. And that's a mouthful. And so it's our role here today to unpack these words and concepts while trying to counteract the effect that dal chawal is actually having on your systems as we speak. So we're going to try and keep this as engaging as possible. Just a few logistical notes before we dive into it. On each of these tables, we have some cue cards that we'd like you all to have a look at and comment on it. And those are things that we'll be collecting at the end of the session and then using it to tweet. We're going to keep the conversation between us for about 35 minutes and then open it up for Q&A. If we can request people to ask questions, not comments, guised as questions, but I don't think we're going to have that issue because people have been really good so far. Cool. So with that, let's get right into it. It's a broad topic, and technology for development. It's a vast subject area, and sure, we're narrowing it here with a focus on adolescent girls, but that still leaves a lot to be spoken about. And so I'm going to ask Poonam here to actually help us, to give us a frame of reference to actually think about this issue before we start to talk about technology solutions.
So I'm going to start by saying when we're talking about gender gap, other than the fact that women have the huge advantage and privilege of getting pregnant and having children, the rest of the gap is unfavorable towards women. Apart from the gaps, we have a stratified society where social structure prevail, which continue to have significant disadvantages for women. The social networks, which we all rely heavily on for our future, current, even in childhood, as we go to school, are missing for most women as they grow up, girls. We heard many times that 60% of the women, of the young girls drop out of school. So what are we going to do about all the gaps they experience? One big gap is isolation. Women do not have spaces where they can communicate, where they can learn, because large percentage of the girls who drop out of school, given the social structures, and it's not considered culturally appropriate for them to even go to the play field. If you look at mobility for young girls, there's a survey which I'm going to quote extensively from of 50,000 young people across the country. It's a population-based survey done by Pop Council. And the survey shows that only 11% of young girls have the opportunity to go alone, step out of their house, even to visit a relative or go to a market. 46% girls reported that they were really scared and petrified on the day of their marriage. And out of them, 1/4 of the girls reported forced sex through their marriage, but on the first date too. It set a really frightening tone for a large number of girls. They do not have the opportunities that school-based opportunities give and other livelihood skills that may be acquired, those young girls who have the privilege to go to school. And socializing starts, but at the same time, very early, and it starts primarily within the household. And if young girls have experienced patriarchal patterns and domestic violence and so on in their household, they tend to emulate or they tend to see it as a norm. Young boys emulate and young girls feel it's a norm to be beaten by the husband. We all know data shows that 60% of girls in NFHS reported that they had been beaten in the period, 6 months period preceding the large NFHS survey. And of this, 40% girls felt it was legitimate to be beaten by the husband under ridiculous circumstances, like if they didn't cook good enough food, or if they didn't take care of the kids in the perception of the husband, or worse still, they stepped out of the house, including going to a primary healthcare center or the market to buy vegetables. I wonder what will happen to all the women in this room, because most of us go out without perhaps often informing our mother-in-law or the household when we make travel plans. Finally, I'd like to say that the isolation that women experience leads to all kinds of wrong information that they access from friends, often from pornographic magazines which are available, trash that is available in the village level. So we really have this enormous opportunity to use technology to create awareness on government programs, opportunities, health-related, but most importantly, strengthening women, young girls who are out of school to still think possibility of skill training, career opportunities, etc.
Thank you so much, Poonam, for framing that for us so well. We've heard about isolation, lack of mobility, harassment at the household level, normalizing of all of these suboptimal behaviors. Let's get sort of our two practitioners in the room, Aditi and Adi. If you all could talk a little bit about, in your work, how has the gender gap manifested itself? What does it actually mean for the kind of work that you're all doing? So take a little time to just talk about what you'll do and then how you all face the gender gap, and then we'll move the conversation to solutions.
So I directly work with the adolescent girl where through Menstrupedia we create awareness about menstruation. And we have been talking about gender-based violence, and so there is a culture of silence around this subject, and the problems drill down to the fact that if a girl can't talk about her natural biological process that she gets every month, and how is she ever going to talk about any violence that she faces on her body? And when we address the issue of menstrual health or the problems which arises because girls are not aware about their bodies and how to take care of their cycles, it has nothing to do with how educated the families are. In fact, girls are discriminated inside their own houses, sadly, by their own parents. So that is the kind of gender gap that I see, where we raise our girls with shame. It all starts when she starts menstruating, don't go outside or don't play with boys, or they drop out from schools. And then dropping out from schools, there are so many other things that happens in the future, and that is what I am trying to address, and that is what I see where we can, there is a huge amount of work that could fill the gender gap in future.
Sure, thanks. Adi?
Yeah, so at Gramvani, we've been using mobile phones and community radio to try to get people at the bottom of the pyramid to really talk to each other, to share information with each other. So we have some simple mobile phone-based applications that we use, and these applications work on very low-end phones. So the idea is that even people who don't own smartphones can use these apps. And my own background is a technologist, I'm a computer scientist, and the way we jump into this space is really of thinking of technology as a magic bullet, that we'll put the technology out there and we'll get everybody to participate, including women, including girls. But that's really where the challenge lies, because some of the inequalities that Poonam has talked about, right? The cultural inequalities, all of them manifest themselves. So be it in our case, something which directly affects us is just the access of that girls have two phones. Now, typically at the rural household level, the husband is the phone owner, and when he goes off to work, to the fields and for agriculture, whatever, they carry the phone with them. So that definitely restricts the participation of women onto the platform. And then, of course, so many other things like our platform is geared towards enabling people to express themselves. And we want women to talk about issues. So in fact, with PFI, we've done some fantastic campaigns around things like family planning and sex selection. With Oxfam, we worked on domestic violence, early marriage, all of these topics where we actually want to engage the women directly. But it becomes very hard because the access is broken. And that is where the challenge lies, that how do we actually recognize potentially other ways in which we can bring them into the loop. Could be some creative ways in which we can get the husband to talk to the women to, why don't you participate. There's a lot of offline activity also we do through women's self-help groups where we directly try to engage with the women and to enable them. And there's very, very interesting experiences as we go along. We can talk more. And one of the key things we realize is that inspiration goes a long, long way. I mean, once we get some woman to actually talk about her problems and share some stories of how she overcame issues of domestic violence at her home, that actually is the game changer, really. That's really, I mean, we've seen it, we have statistics to support all of it. We just see a tremendous ramp up in more participation, more people talking about these issues. So yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, technology is great, but we need to handle it appropriately because at the end, the inequalities you're talking about are very hard-grained. And technology can help address many of these issues and change, I mean, in some sense, even change society for the good.
Sure, thank you so much. So, you know, you threw the term out there, game changer, and that's something that we definitely wanted to get into. And it's not quite as simple as that. There is no real silver bullet, and perhaps to make technology a game changer, there's some, you know, groundwork that we need to get done. So let's flesh that out a little bit and talk about how technology is being used well, in which cases perhaps it's not being used well. Is it in certain ways already a game changer, or clearly does a lot more need to be done before it is? And I think what we also need to keep in mind here when we talk about technology, it's not just mobile phones, it's not just the internet. Mainstream media, you know, continues to be something that can be leveraged, is not being leveraged optimally. So perhaps if we can just go around in this direction and talk about how you've seen technology being used well, and, you know, if it is in fact that game changer.
Okay, so about 3 years ago, I was at a seminar in Seattle, Washington, where some of the best minds who've done research on behavior change communication sadly announced to us, based on their research, and demonstrated that much of the IEC and the behavior change communication that was being used globally, including India, had not really worked. And so, what has worked, we found there's a body of research which shows that entertainment education works in changing behaviors rather quickly. You have the Soul City example in South Africa, and you have Santa Maria in Brazil, there's Mexico, Nigeria. And the evidence shows that along with entertainment education, because people don't want to keep listening to what is wrong in their society and how you fix it. What they really, it's based on is positive deviant approach, which is positive deviance in the community. You do case studies, and then you add the drama and the magic and the rest to it, which is entertaining. And so we launched what Adi mentioned, a serial called Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hu, which was a 360-degree approach, keeping the young girls and the gap they experience in terms of access to telephones, access to technology. You have to think about a 360-degree approach. You know, go on radio, go on television, go on SMS, Facebook, and so on. And Adi, you might like to tell them about how your IVRS collapsed. They were expecting 250 calls a day after Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hu, and the first day they collapsed. Right?
Exactly.
They received 6,000 phone calls. And if I'm not mistaken, 50% of the 600,000 phone calls that have been received on their IVRS is young people. And again, another 50% is girls. And I want to end by just quoting the first random phone call I picked up to hear from amongst this 600,000. She says, I'm Pragya. I'm 14 years old. I'm in a small town in Bihar, and I've seen Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hu, I, a woman, can do anything. And now I'm convinced I can be the president of this country, and when I become the president of this country, I'll do ABCD. But she ends again by saying, I know I'm 14 years old, and I'm only in class 8, but I have this dream. So it's about giving hope, which is what the current political environment in India has done.
Thanks, Poonam. Adi, why don't we have you chime in on that?
Yeah, sure. So actually, the Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hu TV serial was really very fantastic in several ways. So one, of course, is the point about entertainment that Poonam mentioned. We've seen that, all of this phenomena around ludic design of including playfulness in development, and especially, using ICTs to include playfulness, that goes a long way because it really brings the people on and keeps them engaged. And more than that, I think if we are able to figure out what is it that is entertaining for our audience, it actually means that we know our audience much better. So it means effectively that if you're able to think of something which will keep them entertained, it means that all the rest of the interventions we're doing, they're sort of on the right track. And so entertainment has worked very well in this particular case. Another thing which worked was, so we know typically the way development communication has happened. On the one hand, there's been sort of very top-down, one-way broadcasting through mass media that do this, don't do that, or things of that sort, right? And on the other end of the spectrum, there's been a lot of work on interpersonal communication, where there's basically one-to-one conversations with the beneficiaries to make them more aware, influence behavior change. So what technology, the internet, for example, or some of the things we've done on IVR, where we actually create a conversation with the community. So these conversations are very critical because they then end up involving the people not as passive recipients of information, but actually get them engaged in the discussion. So be it family planning or whatever sort of topics they are, so what we did actually with the serial was that as the serial progressed, the first couple of episodes were around family planning, then the next couple of were around sex selection, and there was an entire story going along with it. But on the IVR, we then started putting up prodding questions that why do you think early marriage happens, or what do you think is the effect of early marriage on the career choices of boys, and that actually gets people started. And preliminary research that many of our partners have done have actually revealed that that's a much more effective way of creating behavior change. So, so that's another key aspect that we know sort of works well, where we harness technology to really build more engaging methods with the beneficiaries we want to work with.
Thanks. Aditi, I guess, to link that, to add to what Adi was saying, but I have a question that connects it back to what Poonam started off by saying. So we're talking about isolation, right, of adolescent girls, lack of mobility, right, and a lot of, and within this sort of environment, you then start accessing perhaps the wrong information. Now you're clearly working, Menstrupedia, provides information in a very accessible and simple, friendly manner around, a very important topic in the lives of adolescent girls. And so it is, breaking that culture of silence. It is maybe providing somehow a safe space for them to access this information. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So I'll talk about more how technology has used us to create advocacy around breaking the culture of silence, and also how to sustain this social change. The first thing is that we have this network of more than 100 bloggers. So if you, the silence around menstruation or periods is not geography dependent or society dependent. It's everywhere. It's rural, in urban, in almost all the houses. So we invited people to write about it, share tips about it. People even started writing poems about their periods. Then when you use poem as a medium and when you publish it in the form of blog, it opens up an entire conversation. Suddenly, an issue like periods, which is always portrayed in a negative light, becomes a very positive and beautiful thing. Our blog articles are shared widely on the internet, and one of the articles which got viral was written by a guy. This guy was a law student, second-year law student, and this article says that, ladies, it is unnecessary to hide period from men. And so that is what technology has done. It has brought different people whom we don't think could be the leaders in terms of breaking the silence or bridging the gender gap. They are coming and talking about it openly, and it is helping us to create a lot of advocacy. Other thing is that whenever we work with communities, one of the challenges that we have is having enough funds to get those resources. We have been talking a lot since morning about the CSR initiative, working with the government or NGOs, but working with government or convincing someone in the company that invest some funds for, I want some funds for, taking this menstrual awareness drive to this school. They have to make a pitch. Working with government takes a lot of time. Very recently, we had worked with a group of students in Udaipur for taking this menstrual awareness drive to 10 government schools. And how we did it through crowdfunding. All that they needed to get 500 comic books was 50,000 rupees. And so crowdfunding is more like where you say that, hey, I need this much amount of funds, and everybody puts up a small amount of fund, and that becomes like a big fund. And because of this, in just 1 week time, they could raise this much funds, and this community knows how best the menstrual awareness workshop or drive could be sustainable. They're not giving the book just to the girls. They are working with teachers, because in most of the school, what happens is that when this chapter comes in schools, they skip the chapter because they are inconvenient to talk about it. So they're working with teachers, and so it's like getting 500 books for 10 government school is like at least a batch of girls has been taken care of menstrual awareness program. And whenever you work with, let's say, breaking the taboo around period or such a taboo topic, it's just a matter of one generation. Like, for example, if mother has been following certain myths, she'll impose upon the girls. But, and that is how it passed from one generation to other. But if just one generation stops it, so it would not pass to other generations. So at least these students who were just 20 years, 21 year, through the, through the access or through the use of technology and crowdfunding, they could actually take this drive and make sure that their community, or at least one generation of the girl, is eradicating those myths from their period. Yeah.
Thanks so much. And I think so you've touched on the topic of using technology to create awareness and funding for these kind of initiatives. And I think we'd like to come back to that when we talk about what really what kind of call for action can we make when we in talking with the corporates in this room. Let's move a little bit perhaps to focus on the internet, since that seems to be a hot topic. And I think bridging the gender gap on the internet is something that a lot of development agencies seem to be writing about. The Clinton Foundation and Hillary Clinton herself has been in the media, even as recently as 2 weeks ago, talking about this issue. And I'll just put a few figures out there to frame it for us, and then we can talk a little bit more about the internet and mobile phones and internet on mobile phones and how that can be used to empower adolescent girls. So these studies indicate that there are 200 million fewer women than men online in developing countries, and that 300 million fewer women globally own a mobile phone. In India, internet-based economic activity accounts for more than 5% of the GDP. And it's pretty clear why we need to have women accessing the internet. Without the access to the internet, women lack access to its tools, resources, and opportunities. And of course, because women are critical collaborators in the effort to achieve developmental goals, such as reduced child malnutrition and mortality, or increased economic growth. This gap disadvantages not just women, but their families, communities, and countries. And just to talk a little bit more about the beneficial effects of having more access by women to the internet, an Intel report actually estimates that when women in developing countries get online, 30% earn additional income 45% search for jobs, and 80% improve their education. And lastly, the World Bank estimates that every 10% increase in access to broadband results in roughly 1.4 percentage growth in your in your GDP for developing countries. So this was focusing just on developing countries. So with that, let's talk a little bit more about the gender gap on the internet. It's more, as I think the world has started to realize the beneficial effects of the internet, we then of course have this lag, right, of access between men and women. So Poonam, can we have you talk a little bit about, I guess, that topic, and specifically maybe mobile phones?
So, first I want to say that because of television and access to media, the other half knows now how the better half lives, how the better half functions, and I'm talking about economics. The young people in rural areas, when you speak to them today, and research also shows that their aspiration is today not just to become a little better off. They want to live like the other half lives. And they emulate, whether it's use of cell phone, and the gap is really decreasing there. We have data which shows that 60% of almost 60% of young people are using cell phones in rural areas, 60% men. And for women, the gap is there. It's 40-some percent, 43%. But I think our attempt has to be narrow that gap. And it is not difficult, because the aspiration of the young girl is to aspire to use that. So if the cell phone could be seen as a technology that educates girls while they're still doing the household chores, I would prefer them not to take full responsibility and equal responsibility. But given what the cultural construct is, if there could be programs available which the parents and the community sees as beneficial. See, many of these smartphones, I'm told, which are 3,000 rupees, which is what a large number of girls and boys in villages have access to. You can have Android-friendly, or on Android, you can put some of the apps. And if those apps have an element of education, which improves their health, which improves their knowledge, which improves their understanding or skill, information on jobs and skills, I think society will greatly value that. So we have to create content. And I don't want to take too much time, but just in 2 lines, that's the next thing we are moving to as we launch season 2. We are working with an agency that is working on apps for us, which are going to link not just health issues to, especially for young girls, but issues of employment, livelihoods, and skill. Where can they get skill upgrading or get skills even without an education? For instance, to get a job of an ASHA. We have 800,000 ASHAs in India, and we are going to have many more. This is the accredited social health worker, the grassroots level, frontline worker of the public health system. It needs 15 days training, and you just have to apply for the job. And it's not the numbers. We are going to be employing another 400,000 ASHAs in the next 2 years in India. So there are opportunities like that. So what we have to do is identify the job opportunity where the low-lying fruit and low-hanging fruit, and get them to access that training then, which is not, parents would be willing to send their daughter to do a 2-week training where she'll improve the health of the village. It's also seen as a higher status. So we have to go in those areas and use the cell phones to the extreme advantage, which is culturally acceptable. We have to be ahead of the parents and the culture.
Adi, do you want to?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think Poonam is just hitting it bang on, right? I mean, when you talk about narrowing this gap, that's really where the crux lies. Because, I mean, we've seen, today we're talking of mobile phones and the internet, but I mean, over the years, centuries, we've seen different technologies coming into place, and unfortunately, we still have inequalities. and I mean, with all this new book by Piketty and stuff, you're sort of going back to the inequality, at least when you talk of income inequality of the 18th century. And the point, I mean, so one argument over here is that technology can, in some sense, exacerbate inequality, because ultimately, if we talk of mobile phones, right, you and I have access to higher-end mobile phones. We can do so much more. We have the internet. We can browse for jobs. We can do so much more. When you talk of low-end phones, then everything becomes so much more restrictive. People may not even have the money to buy data plans over there. So, and that's where I think the challenge lies, in finding solutions which can actually not accelerate or not exacerbate this inequality which keeps coming up. And so this is really where the innovation has to lie. That how do we find solutions which in intelligent ways figure out how to bridge the gap, be it in bringing women online or understanding the local context and weaving that into the technology process. And in fact, it goes even beyond technology for that matter, I would say, because the same processes are valid in many other non-technology contexts to, I mean, bridge when you talk of bridging the gap.
Sure. And so let's, I guess, take that further now, get the corporates into the picture, right? And we've spoken about what the issues are. We've spoken about how technology is being used, what more scope there is to use technology to address some of these core issues that we highlighted at the beginning, and where within technology we need to focus on. So which of these areas can corporates actually focus on by, I guess, bringing the core expertise that they have? Have you all thought about that? Any ideas on how you see, whether it's content creation for trainings online? Along that line of thought, are there other things, other areas you feel corporates can really pitch in this space? Poonam, we can start with you.
So ultimately, whether we are talking about education or health or all aspects of bridging the gap for young women, young girls, we are talking about essentially behavior change. We are talking about behavior change not just of the girls. We have to talk about behavior change or work on behavior change of the family, the caregivers, the school, a school teacher going to home when a girl drops out. Within a week, there's again evidence to show within a week, if the school teacher goes to the home of the girl and encourages and convinces her parents, 80% girls do come back to school. We have to have a more caring society. And we have to, there is no negotiation here. We have to close or narrow to the closest sense possible the gap. So the corporate sector can play a huge role in supporting and shaping a strategy for the next 5 years for how we change behavior of all these different people who come in the way of enabling young girls. So a 5-year strategy, normally these days we shouldn't talk about in this very quickly changing technological world, but let's have a strategy, and I can't think of a better organization, if you don't mind my saying so, than Dasra, to really shape with the corporate sector, what can the corporate sector bring on the table? Not just money, but you guys do such a brilliant job of selling soap to those people who don't believe in using soap. You've sold the soap to them. You can do anything. And so work with us, work with Dasra on developing a strategy. How do people like us, by and large, don't even know how to use the good advertising agencies who've succeeded in selling Coke to the poorest person who can't afford. Then why can't we change behavior which is not going to cost very much? So we really need a 5-year strategy, and we need our own experimentation based on global evidence and whatever evidence we have in India. We need to see, we don't have time to waste. Girls cannot go on leading lives out of school, getting pregnant early, getting sexually abused. There is no time to lose. So let's quickly do a strategy.
And thank you for those kind words, Poonam. And we didn't prep that.
No, I know they didn't. I promise you.
Aditi, over to you.
my ask would be to, from the corporates, or whenever we are working with adolescent girl, since we are talking about numbers here and corporate need number and matrix, it is going to take a decade or a two to really see the impact or the changes that are coming. So try to be patient, and definitely we need a strategy, but there are so many amazing work that has been happening, and if you could just start with just investing in, start working on a small level and see how useful it is, and then grow bigger. I would like to give an example of LinkedIn Innovation Grant. What they do is that they identify champions in their own companies. So they have these, their own employees are associated with some kind of cause, and then through their champions, they try to work with the organization which they are connected with and then fund them. So that is also a good way. It's enriching the employee in your own company, and also the kind of social change that they're trying to bring. In both ways, enriching for the companies.
Sure, thanks. Adi, we'll let you have the last word, and then we'll open the floor for questions.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think Poonam and Aditya have really covered some very strong points that the corporates definitely have so much experience of influencing behavior change, working with the people, and there's so much to build upon that. One specific grievance of sorts to corporates that I would like to raise is that, so I've been, Gramani, we've set it up as a social enterprise, which means that we're here to make profits, but with a conscience, really. And therefore, we talk to a lot of impact investors. And what it seems is that there's, of course, a lot of, we know the risk and return sort of relationship, right? That the more risk there is, the greater return there will be. But in the impact space, what seems to be hitting us, and which we've come across again and again over the last couple of years, has been that the corollary is what has ended up being true. That people are happy with low returns. And that's the way of looking at the social sector, that we don't want high returns, we're okay with low returns. But the place where it breaks is that low returns means that they want low risk also. And that is a big problem, because that means that we can't innovate, we can't pitch super risky ideas, and which at least in the, if you look at internet social media companies, or that sort of a space, over there's just a much higher risk-taking appetite. So in some sense, that's my ask also, and a challenge that I want to throw out, that how do we really marry these two things together? That social impacts should not just be looked at as something which is of low return, but because it impacts the risk, it impacts the ability of innovation that we can bring into this space.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, we have a couple of mics roaming around the room, and so, yeah, we can open it up for questions. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Alicia Miranda. I'm with the Thomson Reuters Foundation. I think a lot of one of the challenges in this field is trying to get the voices of girls into the discussion, so the actual beneficiaries to be able to talk about their needs and what they want. And there is a huge opportunity to use technology to do that when you can't physically bring them to the table. So I was wondering if any of your organizations do that, using technology to amplify the voices of girls, or if you've heard of really good projects that are working on that. Thanks.
Yeah, did you all hear? Yeah? Yeah, sure. I'll try, and if I don't do a good job of that, if you could repeat it. No, I think it's the question was around using technology to amplify the voice of adolescent girls, what they want, and one is of course the amplification of that, but also using technology to bring them into the fold, to bring them into the conversation, and whether the work that you all do or the work you'll have seen actually addresses that. Did that? Yeah, great.
I could start. So, so at Gramani, some of the things we have done is that we've been working, we essentially believe in running the core network which gets participation, and then we work with partners who want to use this information which is being generated. So one of our fantastic partners is an organization called Our Say, who basically engage with politicians on discussions. So it was very interesting, and this is not in the context of adolescent girls, but basically a poster boy of social media, Shashi Tharoor, came on a Google Hangout with our say. And it was very interesting because we actually were able to source questions from remote areas of Jharkhand about people who wanted to ask questions about higher education, problems in the quality of education. And these questions were asked on Mobile Vani, these questions were put up to Shashi Tharoor, he actually answered them, and then the questions were sort of played back into the community. So that's sort of one way in which we're seeing how grassroots voices can really make their way into the mainstream. So similarly, things like partnerships with mainstream media, or in fact in the Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hoon serial also, now we're thinking that how can we actually close the loop in bringing some of the voices and incorporate them into the serial itself. So those can be some ways definitely in which the grassroots voices can actually be mainstreamed. Because the mainstream media which caters to you and I doesn't actually think of the bottom of the pyramid as an audience, but they need to be represented. So that can be one way.
The government of India about 6 months ago, or maybe 8 months ago, launched a program called RKSK, which is a program for adolescents where they're going to appoint 800,000 peer educators across the country who will then form little groups with their cohorts within their villages. And we are developing content for them exactly using what you suggested. So we're doing positive deviant studies, which we will emulate, to quote and use your word, in the serial, and add some drama and so on. But adolescents' voices is something that, whether it's the UN level or any meeting where we are talking about adolescents today, their voices are being heard. And most of the time, the young people are saying, leave us alone, let us study, they don't want to marry early. And many of them are forming local pressure groups amongst themselves. From the 80 studies we did on how child marriage was saved, it was either the school teacher came home, or if the patriarch in the house agreed, but 50% was young girls getting together and protesting and convincing their school teacher to go and speak to their home, in their home, or convincing the father. Men are not so bad, they can be convinced.
Aditi, would you want to respond, or should we?
Yeah. Technology is definitely a great tool for creating advocacy and amplifying the voice, and social media is one of the free and effective tool. And so we have this network of writers who work with us, and what we have seen is that young girls like from class 9 and 12 have been also sharing stories of how I was not allowed to participate in certain cultural festival, or how I was not allowed to participate in one of the marriage ceremonies because I started my periods. And that story kind of is being shared, and then those story comes into the consciousness of the decision makers for her, and then the silence is broken, and her voice is reach out to more number of people, saying that yes, it is the time when we break the silence around these issues. Yeah.
Other questions? All right. I guess we haven't been as engaging in the dal chawal is defeating us right now.
People want tea and coffee, probably.
So if there are no questions from the audience, there's one there.
Yeah, I would like to add on what Aditi Ishwar added here. The voices are all around. There are so many non-for-profit organizations who are working here, and they are working with adolescent girls and women. Voices are being heard, voices are being recorded, but there is a need to create a common platform where these voices are being heard. because we are working with so many women. Recently, I culminated a project where 3,300 women raised their voices and recorded the stories. With Gram Mani, we started a project in Uttar Pradesh, but the women from Bihar also logged in and shared their voices. But these voices are in isolation. There is a need to have a common platform where these voices are being heard.
Yeah.
But that's exactly where technology comes. You know, it's a huge gap technology can fill in. You know, nobody called those young people. There were no women's group and NGOs that mobilized the young people who came to India Gate when Nirbhaya was raped. It was really the one thing, that's the telephone technology, the internet, that got thousands and thousands of young men and women out. And the women outnumbered the men. If you looked at the TV footage, I don't have the exact numbers. And many other protests you've seen, and online, you know, you see such sensible. Today I read online comments by young people much more than Shashi Tharoor and the rest of the older people. And they seem to come from a right perspective. I think we need to hear those voices much more, but the young people will use technology. They will use the internet for agency and for collecting, getting together over issues. You already see, Aditi, probably you know much more about this, but you see so many groups on the net on issues. There's one group called Red Dot, which is against early marriage, preventing early marriage. And it's a 21-year-old young man. I'm hoping to see him one of these days getting an award here. I've only seen him on the net. I don't know him. But there are so many different young people mobilizing and doing groups. And what we have to do is, and this is again a suggestion to the corporate sector and to Dasra, to see how we can work on facilitating, nudging the young people, especially girls in the rural areas or the girls who are out of school or in slums, to develop agency. Once agency comes, then self-esteem, protection, safe space, all the issues we all talked about will happen. So it's really about the internet is going to do what you want to see happen.
Oh, there's a hand up over here in the front. Thank you.
One of the awardees. Huh?
Yeah, I have a question, or rather an observation that both of you made, Aditi and Adi. It's that when you're on a sort of a high-risk, slow-growth venture, Aditi, you seem to have moved towards crowdfunding and using technology for crowdfunding. Does that mean that the corporate funding was lacking? Or is this just a new avenue that you're finding? And the same question to you, Adi.
I think that crowdfunding has become more like a leveler. It's definitely there is a gap. There is a gap of you know, like when you pitch your idea to so you have to either go through a competition, which like many of us would have gone. Or Sankalp does a lot of impact investment, and you go through, and that's amazing. But if let's say we work with these young students who are Gandhi Fellows, and these students want to work with their communities. Now, they don't want to turn this social cause or working with the girls in the school as their business or as their social venture. They just want to contribute to the community, and they can easily do it by using crowdfunding. And I think, yeah, it's not about there is a lack, but there is other option as well to get those the required amount of fund. At least that, because of that, things are not stopping, and they don't have to prepare a lot of numbers, because once you start preparing a lot of numbers and pitch, somehow it also deviates you from working with these group are already teachers. So when they want to take this menstrual awareness drive to their community and the kind of fund they require, they did it on their own with the help of so many other people. And it's not large amount of money. It's just 2,000 or like everybody funds, and that's kind of helped.
Yeah. So at Gramani's end, I mean, something we're trying to work on much harder now is to just work more closely with the marketing departments of corporates, because so one of the points that Poonam mentioned, for example, that they already have so many feet on the ground. And that's something that we want to collaborate with them to leverage their existing resources. Because what we do know is that, I mean, when we talk of using technology to empower people, we do hit upon the same sort of inequalities that we've been talking about. And therefore, even in our own work, other than the mobile money platform that we operate, there's also a fairly large offline component to it, where we work with volunteers on the ground who publicize the platform among other people, who also train them. So many of these are women volunteers who bring other women onto the platform. So, so that's really where there's a lot of scope for collaboration. And that, I feel, can really go a long way with marketing departments, business correspondent networks on the ground, and so many other entrepreneurial ventures on the ground.
Yep, there's a question in the middle.
Hi, I'm Erin Quinn from Damagi. Adi, you brought up the very salient point that the use of technology can actually exacerbate existing inequalities. So my question for you three is, as we use technology and as we introduce it to try to narrow the gender gap, what are some very specific technical and programmatic strategies we can use to make sure that we're not simultaneously widening other gaps, like between the poor and the very poor, or the literate, semi-literate, or illiterate?
So I think just to make sure I got the question, so you're saying what sort of ways can we use to make sure that the inequality is not exacerbated using technology? Yeah, well, I mean, I really have no answer. If I knew that, that would have been cool. But yeah, I mean, I guess do need to think of some basic design principles, right? I mean, if you see stuff like mobile phone, right, which is what we're talking about, right, being used in so many interesting ways for the top of the pyramid, right? I mean, there's so much information, and for most of us in metropolitan areas, we can now just use Flipkart, Amazon, all of these things to just get deliveries, and it's all, you know, it just comes free of cost. There's no delivery charges also that we need to pay. So point is just at that point itself to start thinking, right, that who's actually paying for all of this, and what ways can we use so that those who don't have access to such facilities, right, what can happen over there? So technology like mobile phone, which is sort of cross-cutting across different classes, can have that effect, but then maybe we should think we need to work hard on building new technologies or figure out new ways to use mobile phones so that those with limited access can make and avail the same sort of facilities that we have access to. Because otherwise the inequality will just keep widening, really, because, right, I mean, those of us who have access will just be able to do so much more with the same thing. So, so yeah, I mean, this is probably where the corporates can help. This is really what also in the government standpoint they talk of as a public good, that how do we fund and create public goods. So, so they need to be more aware, and this is where probably Dasra can help a lot in bringing a lot more awareness to this sector, that what sort of inequality minimizing things can be done.
Yeah, I mean, Poonam, just to build on that, in your mind, I guess are there clear ways that you see or maybe have seen, or maybe it's potentially there, that technology can increase the gender gap, right? That's the, I guess, the dark side of a lot of what we've been talking about. There's some automatic assumption around technology is working for good, but I guess there's perhaps maybe not equally, but there is a chance that it could work in the other ways. And do you have any examples? Have you come across that?
So You know, unless we ensure that we leverage technology for the advantage of young girls and for opportunities for skilling them in using some technology, even the girls out of school, I want to reiterate that we do need to think about those large number of girls who are out of school and finding ways to reaching them. And now that there's going to be high density cabling across the country, where panchayats are going to have access to a lot of technology in the new government's plans, which are moving very quickly, I understand. The gender gap may decrease, so we have to be very conscious, may increase, sorry. So we have to be very conscious and work consciously on strengthening and empowering women with use of basic technology. That is one. And it can be done through distance learning. It can be done through television. One thing we know that Doordarshan, for instance, has penetration in 80% of the country. We are laughing because
you use the word, Poonam.
Yeah, I was waiting for someone to use the word penetration and attack them and say, according to the new rape law, any kind of penetration is a jailable offense. And they're reminding me I've done it myself, to myself. Okay, so I won't use that word. But given that Doordarshan reaches 80% of the country, it is a great medium. We don't use Doordarshan. You know, we think when we go to NDTV or Times Now, the shouting match, we're reaching India. As Arnab keeps saying, tell the nation. There is no nation there. It's only 0.4% of the country has accesses all the English channels put together. So we have to use Doordarshan to reach out to and young girls are allowed to watch Doordarshan because they don't have the so-called Ashleel programs on Doordarshan. So it's a very harmful, good medium to use. IVRS is another good medium to use. And finally, we have to ensure lack of technology, knowledge or use or access by girls doesn't become the glass ceiling that English has done to a lot of people. So if you don't know English, it's like a glass ceiling. So I think we have to work. So when I said, let's have a 5-year strategy to use technology to change behavior, I was more than serious. I was very serious. Otherwise, this could happen, the disadvantage. And technology can become, like the demographic dividend, it can become a disaster. And finally, technology has been used, we know, to share the wrong information, girls being, most often they they're forced into sex work or they're blackmailed after being sexually abused. It's technology that has been used, and I think we have to, the rape bill should include that, and the sexual harassment bill should find a way to cover that.
Great, so we've been given the sign that we're out of time, so just, I guess, 30 seconds to try and summarize a lot of what we've spoken about. So I think, we started off defining the problem fairly well. We've spoken about isolation that adolescent girls face, lack of mobility, which then can lead to, not only lack of access to the information they need in those years of their life, but access to the wrong kind of information, which only exacerbates the situation. Technology, can it be a game changer? Sure, it can, but we need to have a more holistic approach, a 360-degree approach to it, accessing still mainstream media to create perhaps a certain level of awareness that then you can reinforce with, push messages and mobile phone and internet. Is certainly are ways that you can make technology truly into the game changer that it is poised to be. And we can have corporates playing a more strategic role in actually in thinking about this from a 5-year perspective, not just year on year. We would request them to stay patient through this process, but clearly there are strong outcomes that they can look forward to at the end of it. And I think the one piece that really stuck with me for this was using technology as potentially creating that virtual safe space, and safe space here being really the key term within which we can start getting this information out to adolescent girls that they so sorely need. So thank you all very much for being a great